Thank you so much for attending my PowerPoint presentation on Ember Spirit. Mr. Run Ya Down. Ember Spirit is a melee agility mid laner whose most iconic feature is pairing insane mobility with excellent AoE damage potential. That ability comes from his ultimate, Fire Remnant, which sends forth a ghost of fire that Ember Spirit can then teleport to, dealing damage when he arrives. The base ability has 3 charges, but with an Aghanim Scepter it goes all the way up to 5. This ability single-handedly makes him one of the best chasing heroes in the entire game, and he also can deal a ridiculous amount of magic damage whenever he jump scares you when you thought you got away from the fight. Once he does catch up to you, he can use Searing Chains to keep you in place. This is a multi-target lockdown effect that deals damage over time, and I swear to God the duration increases by 0.1 every time it's cast against me. Now if you can't run away, the obvious idea is to just fight back, but Flame Guard makes that easier said than done. This ability gives Ember Spirit a temporary radiance that also absorbs 70% of all incoming magic damage. It's a menace in the lane, a very strong farming tool, and it also stacks with Ember Spirit's innate, which gives him an even smaller baby radiance around him at all times. Lastly, he has Sleight of Fist, which is one of the most fun abilities to use in all of Dota 2. This allows Ember Spirit to target an AoE and then disappear, only to right-click every single target that was in that AoE at the time that it was cast. The targets are chosen randomly and in succession, and during the entirety of Sleight of Fist, Ember Spirit is completely invisible and untargetable. If you're up against swarm heroes like Broodmother and Phantom Lancer, it's possible to spend the entire cooldown of Sleight of Fist in Sleight of Fist, and by the time you come back, you're ready to cast it again. It's great for dodging spells and is the reason that Ember Spirit has favorable lane matchups against other fair heroes. Once he hits level 5, he can just spam this button on them and they'll probably have to leave the lane. Sleight of Fist is also buffed by his first facet that allows him to right-click the closest unit to him twice. His other facet buffs Searing Chains, giving it 4 targets instead of the usual 2. If you have any Fire Remnants out and there are enemy units near it, they will also have Searing Chains cast on them as well. The Searing Chains facet is definitely the pick right now, since Ember Spirit is more focused on control and chasing down enemy heroes. But if you're keeping the Ferrari 430 build alive by stacking 3 Battle Furies and going BOTs, the Sleight of Fist buff might be more your speed. Now the majority of heroes in Dota 2 have to dedicate themselves to one of 2 damage types. Even heroes that can in theory do both of them, like Lina, usually pick one to lean into entirely, but Ember Spirit is somewhat unique in that he doesn't have to make a decision at all. He deals an insane amount of magic damage thanks to Flame Guard, his innate and Searing Chains, and then Sleight of Fist gives him a burst physical option, as well as his just generally good right click. The end result is that you have an agility caster hero who kind of plays like a universal bruiser. There's a bunch of different items you can go, and while the build is pretty set in stone this patch, you could justify pretty much anything on this hero as a 4th item. He's one of very few heroes that you can go a Daedalus and a Shiva's Guard in the same game and probably still win. Over the past 4 to 5 years, I think that every single pair of boots, except maybe Guardian Greaves, has been meta on Ember for at least one period of time. In addition to bringing both magical and physical damage to the table, Ember also doesn't have to pick between burst, AoE, or damage over time. If there is a way to deal damage, Ember most likely has it. He can deal burst physical with Sleight of Fist, while also dealing AoE damage to everything else near your primary target. Searing Chains to lock down several heroes, dealing magic damage while also preventing them from running away. And if the enemy does survive your initial burst damage, you can chase them down like the boulder in Indiana Jones with your ultimate, dealing a big burst of magical damage every time you pop up right behind them. This wide tree of damage options also makes it really difficult to build defensive items against this hero. If they go for a Ghost Scepter, you can just burn them down with Flame Guard and your innate. If they go for Glimmer Cape, you can use Searing Chains to keep them still for almost the entirety of the duration. And if they go for a Yule Scepter, that's more time for your cooldowns to refresh while they have to stare down at you like a hungry shark. That leaves Force Staff. Do I have to remind you what your ultimate does? Well, even if I don't, I'm going to anyway. Fire Remnant is a hilarious spell, because it's one of those things that can be described in just a couple of words, but in reality does damn near everything you could want an ultimate to do in the game. You set it down, and you can teleport to it. That's it. But with just a little bit of creativity, you can use this as an offensive, defensive, escape, chase, everything tool. Plus it has a bunch of other funny niche applications that you will discover as you play. Now the obvious idea is to use it like a Blink Dagger. Throw it near the enemy hero, hop in, use Flame Guard, Searing Chains, right-click him a couple times. That's effectively the bedrock of your combo. However, because it has 3 charges, you can use it to weave in and out of the fight, remaining invincible for a good chunk of the time that you're there. Remnant in, use all your spells, use Sleight of Fist to make sure the enemy team can't click on you, and then, during Sleight of Fist, cast Fire Remnant again and then teleport to it out. You've now dealt a ton of damage, both physical and magical, and the enemy team never had a chance to do anything about it. Now, if you are an Ember Spirit picker, you will unfortunately be the smartest person on your team in pretty much every game. This means that you're going to have to escape from team fights almost as often as you're going to have to start them. Luckily, Fire Remnant comes in handy for this as well. It has a pretty solid cast range, and the Remnant's movement speed is actually based on your own. Throw it out before they can use any spells on you, and after you tank a bunch of spells using Flame Guard, escape with your life. Depending on how far away you tried to cast it, it might take a second or two for it to get to safety, but you'll have Flame Guard and Sleight of Fist to protect yourself during the travel time. Now, there are other very good heroes in the game at chasing, such as Puck, but if you have enough mana and enough charges of Fire Remnant, not even a Puck can catch you. You have Illusory Orb on steroids, and you should make him very well aware of it whenever he decides to chase you after the fight. Just like Puck, you also have an Ankle Breaker built into your kit. Let's say you're running away from the enemy team and you have two paths to follow. Throw Fire Remnant down on one and then just walk the other way. In a pub environment, there is no way that they adequately cover both escape options, and as a result, you'll probably just walk away scot-free. Lastly, for the niche applications, Fire Remnant is extremely good at securing runes. Throw it down on one, walk towards the other, and then appear instantly wherever the rune goes. If you did somehow lose the rune fight, you can instead throw it down in the mid lane, teleport to base, sip your bottle a couple times, and then come back to lane with a full bottle, full mana, and full HP, ready to spam Sleight of Fist on the enemy mid laner all over again. In short, Fire Remnant is a hilarious ability, and if you're a creative player, you'll find way more applications than the ones I've listed here. Now, if all of this sounds appealing to you, or you just really want to express your status as a China Boo to everyone else in the lobby, here's how to play Ember Spirit. Now note that while Ember Spirit has been a viable carry, and at times even an offlaner in some patches, Ember Spirit is currently a mid laner and nothing else. You're going to be playing him as a pos 2 through and through, so queue up a bottle and get your ward ready. Now in the current meta, maxing chains is actually the way to go due to his facet. Get an early point in that and try to position yourself in a way that you can hit both the enemy mid laner and secure the range creep with the ability at the same time. You're going to be getting a bottle pretty early on as long as you're actually securing those range creeps, so don't worry about tanking a good amount of harass during the first couple of waves. If they do decide to cast spells on you, you can use Sleight of Fist, which you'll get at level 2, in order to hopefully dodge or at least mitigate some of the damage. The current boots of choice are phase boots, which is interesting because in a really old video, Edge, or Eric Wright or whatever he goes by, used to theorycraft that phase boots would eventually become meta on this hero because the travel time of the Fire Remnant depends on your current movement speed. So you can pop phase boots in order to make the Fire Remnant go faster, and he said that as a joke, but then like 5 years later it actually is the meta, so shout out to him I guess. Anyway, you're also going to go a Mage Slayer. The regen from this item is really helpful, and because you don't have any points in Flame Guard, magic damage is still a very real threat to you, so this helps mitigate that as well. By this point, you should have at least 1 point in your ultimate, a Mage Slayer, phase boots, and a bottle. That means that it's go time, but remember that you are still a frail little bitch, and as a result, you're best going off second through the breach. You want a big, tanky offlaner to jump in, tank a bunch of spells for you, hopefully stun a couple of heroes, and then you want to be the one in, dealing all of the damage. Ember loves playing with traditional Blink Stunner 3s, Centaur, Slardar, heroes like that. They will function as your BKB until you get an actual BKB, though you'll probably go for a Kaya and Sanj first. That item generally buffs your tankiness and gives you a good chunk of spell amp, which helps you with pretty much every ability aside from Sleight of Fist. This also means that he is an agility hero that goes the 2 swords that are not agility, and I find that very funny. Aghanim Shard, whenever you can get it, is also quite nice, since you can spam remnants out in a fight to use later, and then use them to cast Searing Chains on the enemy backline. Once the fight is done, the enemy team's carry or maybe their support duo may be struggling to run away, but if you're playing as Ember Spirit, your job is to make sure that that never happens. Use your remaining Fire Remnants and mana to track them down, and use Searing Chains to hold them in place while you wail on them with your right clicks. If you're playing this hero properly, every fight will have no survivors, and if they do, it's you after the rest of your team fed. I wrote a little bit here about the concept of a power valley, basically the opposite of a power spike. Feel free to read it if you like. Now, if you're tired of losing to Ember Spirit, or you really enjoy complaining about tankies on Twitter, here's how to beat Ember. The first and most obvious solution is to cheese the hell out of him in lane. Ember Spirit does really well in lanes against other traditional fair mid laners. Think Queen of Pain or the other spirits. If you're able to pick melee hero nightmares like Monkey King and Huskar against this hero, you definitely should. Especially in the current build with maxing chains, it's very difficult for Ember Spirit to get back and dominate a game when he doesn't have a good laning phase. If you can shut him down in the first couple of minutes, he can never get his tempo game going, and it's going to be very difficult for him to take over later on. Now, if he does have a decent lane and is starting to get the snowball rolling with a Mage Slayer, the obvious option is to just lock him down with stuns. Silences tend to be a very good option, and that's why Night Stalker is over there on the right, but instant disables like Hexes on Shadow Shaman and Lion are also great options. Consequentially, items like Orchid Orchid and Basher should be in the back of your mind whenever you see an Ember on the enemy team. Lastly, Ember Spirit is a hero who wants to enter fights with aplomb, basically mashing his keyboard and dealing as much damage as he can in order for all of his cooldowns to tick down simultaneously. Heroes that can survive his intro burst, think Dragon Knight, Slark, maybe even Tinker with the shield, are very good against Ember because he now has to use his damage over time effects to deal with your entire HP bar. A side effect of having such a wide array of damage options is that Ember Spirit can't really rely on just one of them. In a war of attrition or a war of burst, he's probably going to lose. If you can sustain your way through his damage over time or just face tank his intro burst, Ember Spirit is probably going to have to run away from this fight. I also forgot to mention it in the slideshow, but he is an agility hero who relies entirely upon his spells. Mana burn is a very potent weapon against this. If you can burn all of his mana at the end of a fight, he will no longer be able to fire Remnant away to safety and will instead be forced to awkwardly limp. If you really want to BM him, be sure to just follow him around for a couple of seconds as he tries to limp away. Don't kill him, just follow him around making eye contact. Let him know that everything that's happening to him is entirely intentional. In conclusion, Ember is a stylish hero, and you should absolutely play him. Remember that the easiest spirit is whichever one you happen to be playing in the current moment, and if you were a smarter, better, and more handsome player, you would have picked one of the other ones instead. Peace on planet Earth.